Hi friends, this is Krish the Urban Naxal, and this is part 3 of the global conspiracy to make you a contract debtor. To be clear, the idea of making people, ordinary folks, could be wealthy folks, not necessarily middle class folks. The idea of making them into contract debtors is not necessarily a conspiracy in the sense that people sit down, that companies, that the top honchos of different companies sit down, form a cartel, and then go about executing a plan to make them contract debtors. I don't think that is exactly how things are happening. I think it's more along the lines of someone sees someone else getting away with something. If you are the head honcho of A company and you see that B company is constantly getting away with non-delivery of the contractual obligations of that company, usually towards the common man who does not have the power to litigate, does not have the power to enforce the contract, and contrarily, he sees that these guys are collecting money, sometimes more than what is agreed, enforcing all kind of punitive interests and penalty payments and things like that because of a large number of conditions that have been imposed on the customer. Conditions that are almost impossible to fulfill and therefore will almost inevitably mean that the customer will not only pay what is agreed but will end up paying penal interest and compensations of whatever is deemed as compensation to the company and basically lots of other stuff, extras, frills and so on, which the company may at will introduce into the contract. Now this happens because of the legal illiteracy of common people. Common people are basically legally illiterate. They are financially illiterate, they are legally illiterate. You offer them a service, you front end the payment. The service or the goods happens later. You tie them up with a system such as the ECS mandate. So automatically funds get released into the company's account from the customer's account automatically upon demand or upon schedule. However, the service that is supposed to be rendered or the goods that are supposed to be delivered are not delivered on time and there is a backlog. In a situation like this, the customer is not in a position to correct the deficiency. It will not only be an uphill battle for him to try to correct the deficiency, the deficiency of service. If he goes to court, the first thing that a company does is stop the service and they have already collected surplus amounts from the customer. So, in addition, they may start doing all kinds of other things as well to punish him, to harass him, to pressure him. So these are some kinds of activities that happen. I will give you specific examples. The lowest hanging fruit for me is to give you the example of the building industry. The building industry is a particularly good example of how this conspiracy of making you contractual debtors functions. And the reason is it has a very, very complicated structure in the agreement. The agreement is necessarily very complicated. You can actually increase the complication by separating the land component and the built up component. So let me give you an example of how this is done. You sell someone the idea of a dream house, a villa. In a moment of misjudgment, which is quite easy to induce, given that people who are busy keep wanting a villa or some place to unwind, you sell them the idea that they can buy a patch of land in a nice place which sounds nice. It doesn't have to be nice. You tell them about this patch of land which they will have to buy and then build a house on it. It sounds good. They will usually not ask to read the agreement. If they happen to ask to read the agreement, they will usually not be able to understand the legalese behind the agreement, the waivers and disclaimers that have been worked in. And not only waivers and disclaimers, the external parties that you have written into the agreement. So there are conditions based on which you will fulfill your end of the obligation, that is the company's end of the obligation. Your deliverable is conditional on someone who is not part of the contract coming through on a number of other counts. If so and so does this, then I will fulfill my end of the contract. That so and so is not part of the contract. They will work it in. Now what this does is it allows an escape route to the builder. There are numerous such escape routes that are built into a contract, with the result that it is virtually unenforceable in a court of law. It can take years or decades to actually prove that a builder intentionally created a system by which he doesn't have to deliver what he is supposed to deliver, namely a flat of particular dimensions with certain amenities, superior quality amenities, clubhouse, other things, all those frills that one looks forward to in a house. And on the other hand, to enable him to squeeze the customer as much as he wants, so that the amount that the customer is supposed to pay regularly, he will pay that and then some, and then some. Now, that amount which he is getting periodically can be securitized, and in the agreements of many builders you will see a securitization clause. Looks innocuous, looks like, hey listen, the builder is going to get a project loan, and so he is going to make you pay your money directly to the bank, to the financier. Why does he have to pass it through himself? Why does he have to pass it through the company? You pay the financier from where he is getting the loan, the project loan. Sounds good. Sounds good. Except if you read the securitization clause, you will realize that it enables the builder to actually divest himself, to actually exit the contract. He is going to leave the financial institution essentially receiving the funds. Nominally, he may leave his company as the entity which is supposed to deliver the houses, deliver the finished flats, the goods for which you are charging. But actually, the whole contract just works as a money supply contract. So you can securitize the funds. You are a slave. You are a slave for the next, I don't know how many years, 10, 12, 15, 20 years. because you will be paying EMIs to your bank for the loan that has been disbursed to this company on demand. They get their money. You don't necessarily get your house. This is one part of it. The other part of it is you may not even be in a contractual agreement before you sign the registered agreement. They say they are going to forfeit your amount. And they can forfeit because they are companies, and you will find it difficult to recover the money. Now, my YouTube channel has a lot of instances of this particular thing happening. Large amounts of money, sometimes mind-boggling amounts of money. 70%, 80% of the value of the flat being confiscated by the builder in return for nothing, absolutely nothing. And even without a contract, this amount can be confiscated. And it's extremely difficult, given India's government apathy, public apathy. The media doesn't want to cover these things. The media is more interested in sensationalizing the communalism that our government chooses to spread, the chaos that our government chooses to consciously spread so that economic issues don't come to the fore. For so many reasons, a person who is a victim of a company like this is essentially helpless. But let me tell you one or two escape routes from this. Again, the best escape route, there is the saying, the best way to stay dry is to not get wet. So the best way to avoid getting into a trap of such companies is always not to get into a contract where the deliverable happens years later and your side of the deliverable is immediately. It happens right now. You are going to pay money right now. The company is going to give you a house 2 years later, 3 years later, 5 years later. Don't get into that kind of a contract. It will kill you. It is designed to kill you. And it is not just in India. Same thing holds good in countries like, as I said, it happens in Dubai. It happens, I think, in Hong Kong. I'm not sure of it, but I'm informed it happens in Hong Kong. And it happens in UK. Not sure about US, but it happens in UK. The down payment is deliberately forfeited, is confiscated, and you are made to put a down payment without the other guy getting into a contractual obligation with you. He is free, you're tied, you're bound. Anyway, real estate is my pet peeve, so I devote a lot of energy to this, and the large scale transactions happen in the real estate industry. Hence, this is one of the major fronts for this kind of what I said, a conspiracy. Now, as I said earlier, the people within the corporates are very nice people, the managers are very nice people, everybody is smelling of roses, everybody is well intentioned, nobody says this should happen, everybody acknowledges that this kind of thing happens occasionally. They don't acknowledge the scale and dimension of it. They don't acknowledge the fact that it is kind of an organized thing and it is by design and not by default. The company executives will almost never acknowledge it. Worse still, the government, the judiciary, the police do not acknowledge that this is happening because of design. They think it's an unfortunate consequence of a lot of transactions. It's like, hey man, when you have a lot of transactions, when you're doing a lot of things, when there's a lot of activity going on, your company is doing so much for so many people, a few transactions go wrong. That's how they are looking at it. That's not an accurate way of looking at it, because those few transactions which go wrong in the favor of the company, and they profit the company immensely, massively. I dare say that a large chunk of their profits, I would say 20, 30, 40% of their profits come from forfeitures and confiscations and things like that. The rest of it comes again not so much from selling the product itself as from securitization. You are getting money from your contract debtors. They are your contract debtors. That is the product. The product is not the flat that you produced, you promised them in the end. That will happen. The product is that you have these guys who have promised, who have entered into contract with you to pay money, and at regular intervals or upon demand, they are supposed to pay you money, and you can now securitize the receivables. You now have a bunch of contract debtors. That is your product. You can sell that. Your company can sell those contract debtors, can trade those securities, hence securitize. I think that is the real product. Anyway, so this is one of the large scale things. The second, let me try to come up with more examples for you. You have performers. Many of the performers, actors, enter into contracts with companies who pay them, celebrities. The companies which pay these celebrities a regular amount by their time, tie them up in a contract to do whatever performance they are asked to do. Maybe model for products, maybe turn up at events, maybe act in movies where these guys enter into the contract. So essentially the celebrity is a slave. Now, where is the element of contract debtor? The element of contract debtor enters if you have made the contract very, very complicated. It is almost certain that a very large number of your celebrities with whom you have a contract will fail to honor their contractual obligations, or will fail. You can make them fail because you have loaded that many impossible conditions on them that they are bound to fail. And when they fail, for example, you signed up an actress for 10 movies consecutively. Maybe after 6, she has emotional and mental exhaustion from rigorous shooting schedules, and then she refuses to do the remaining 4 films, and that's when you invoke the penalty clause. She becomes your contract debtor. She now owes you money. This is one way of imposing a burden on the person who trusts you. So this happens. Let me give you a few more examples. There are construction companies. There are companies which are contractors. There is a company in Bangalore. I'm not going to name it because I have not named anyone in this particular topic. There is a contract company. It takes contracts for building a house on land which you may already own. It asks for money upfront. It takes the money upfront. A lot of it. It writes up it makes you sign on contractual paperwork which are not really contractual paperwork, because it is full of disclaimers and waivers and loopholes for your side of the contract, the performance of your side of the contract, and it is full of penalties and promises and all that kind of thing, which basically an impossible number of conditions, such as you will pay the amount upon demand within 2 months of, or within 1 week of the demand, this kind of contractual phrases. And if you fail to pay upon demand, then the contract shall be forfeited, and whatever amount you paid so far will be forfeited. Okay, this is one kind of thing. The way we will terminate the contract at our will. Now, it is couched in such a beautiful way. It's not beautiful, no, it's quite ugly actually. But it's couched in such abstract words, it's very difficult to read. Another one is, there are companies which promise to provide you leads. They take an ECS mandate from you so that money will come automatically from your bank account to their bank account. The performance of their their end of the deal usually or often doesn't happen. It is not a genuine lead. It is not a genuine bunch of leads they are giving you. There are often fake leads. So they just shower you with fake leads until you are very tired. So these are some ways in which, but this is on a rather smaller scale. I don't think this is a very massive operation. It's large. I don't think it's massive on the scale of the real estate industry. So guys, stay away from these contracts which aim to turn you into contract debtors. I am your friend Krish the Urban Naxal. Jai Hind, Jai Maharashtra, Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan.